Our next session is titled Top Future Skills in 2022, a framework for corporate data literacy. And our speaker, Ginesh Koottakara, is the head of sales from StackFuel GmbH. Ginesh, the stage is yours.
So, can you hear me? Great. So, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you. It's packed. I didn't expect that because being so late. So, I'm not really happy to be the last obstacle between a cold glass of beer and the riverside, but we will try to make it worthwhile. So, what are we going to do today? We'll talk about corporate data literacy. What does it mean? I heard the presentation before, they were talking about skills, and I saw a lot of presentations, and they were always saying, which is good, we have to use data for this and that, but what we as a company, as a learning company, we are always asking us, and if you look at your workforce, I don't know how big the companies are you're working for, but in order to really make that happen, doesn't your workforce have to be really data literate? Because not every company, as we've seen before, they were not born in the internet. We have a lot of companies who are still yet to make the transition to use data as business drivers. So what we believe is, as a e-learning company, that we want to train the majority of the workforce to become data literate, and we want to train specific people to find new job roles. Data analysts, data scientists, business analysts, and we do that, and what we find out is that a lot of people are really not data literate because, they haven't learned it. We have learned PowerPoint, we have learned Excel. If you look at a company's communication, the company language might be German, might be English, and that's how you really lubricate communication and skills. But if the people are not data literate or don't speak data, it's really hard to collaborate. So we are talking about what we encounter when we talk to companies. We find out how decisions are made. We see what are the challenges, and at least we want to contribute a bit to define, what defines a data-driven company. So at first, what do we encounter? Basic things, Are all of your workforce meticulously following simple rules? If you look at, let's say, if you have an Excel spreadsheet, do they meticulously know, first name, one column, second name, second column, postal code, one column, so that you have structured data. And imagine how many people you have collecting data, unstructured. Think of emails, or just randomly opening spreadsheets and collecting data. So are they all religiously following how to structure data that then your experts later can process them? So this is what you ask. There are some experts here, but think of the John Does and the Jane Does of your companies, because they could be a major contribution. What is the problem if you don't have structured data? So to go back in time and restructure them might be very expensive. To recollect them, might be very expensive. So it's very hard to analyze. So that's why we believe that data literacy should be, available to everyone in the workforce. Then there are more challenges. 80% of the workforce are data collectors, and most of the data are unstructured. What does unstructured mean? So imagine, so you are a sales manager. You have your CRM systems, and your sales reps are supposed to sell a product or your service, right? And sales reps are typically, overconfident. They will, forecast a deal. They will, say, the deal will be closed then. But usually they overestimate themselves. But imagine if you can automatically read through all the emails, exchange between the sales reps and your prospective client. Look at all the auto replies, coming because they're on holidays. So you can imagine, if all the decision makers, like, in this season are on holidays, my deal might get postponed. So this is something you can really factor in. And a lot of this data are unstructured. Then typically what we find, the person with the most authority, the person with the higher rank, the person with the most experience will make the decision despite the facts. So, I mean, all these weird statistics, you can say since the 1950s, carbon, dioxide increased and therefore obesity increased, which is strange. Of course, we have a bigger population than in the 1950s, and richer countries, richer people tend to go obese more. So you shouldn't hear to someone saying, we should reduce carbon dioxide. We should do it, but not for reducing obesity. That's not the major objective of that. Then, what we are always seeing, it's the learning journey to really get enlightened is very complicated. It's not really easy. Again, weird statistics. So, if somebody is told, the more beer is consumed, the more skin cancer cases we have, right? So, and you will, ask yourself why that's not possible, or a couple of people do. Then you add, the more beer is consumed, the more skin cancer occasions we have, and the more ice cream is consumed, which is also strange, right? And then you tell that person, it's summertime, like this. So, and then you start to get, okay, well, I get the hang of it, But then you add regional differences, because let's say Middle Eastern countries where there's low beer consumption, but still high exposition to sunlight, they are just really down in the ranks regarding skin cancer, It's not those countries. So it is really hard to realize, it's a complicated journey to realize, what data literacy really means. So, what do we believe is data-driven? Of course, that is a given. Data has to be collected. Then, data has to be joinable, so that that companies' data should be joinable from department 1 to department 2. Therefore, it has to be shareable. So, imagine an example: you had a cardiac surgery, and your private doctor should know everything about the cardiac surgery to give you the further treatment. Otherwise, you have a disruption of information because of the disruption of data. Then the data has to be curable, because you have a lot of data and you want to be able to produce queries to reduce the amount of data to give it more meaning to you. Then what we see, what is report and what is really analytics. So if you look at a report, you can say, we increased our sales from January to June by 10%. So, but then you look at the product, and the product might be, again, beer, of course, which is quite probable because in May, June, July, the consumption might have increased. But then at the same time, you have to put that into perspective. Look at the last year. Perhaps the increase this year is lower than the increase last year. Why is that? Is there a change in customer habits? Is there a change in the marketing spend we did? So that is the difference between report and analytics. And then again, is all of your workforce aware of that? And that's basically what we see right now. So we are, regarding all the presentations we saw today, we are somehow mature here, but not really on a broader level. Is this data, the fundamental data, are they correct? And only if they are correct, we can basically cross the chasm and then use all the sophisticated tools and methodologies and algorithms to make decisions regarding the future. So we are working with some data-driven companies, and what we find with them, what they're doing is, of course, a data culture on the upper right. That is something we can help with as a company. And then continuous testing, A and B testing, that means really eliminating a variable when testing, monitoring, and then you have different models, you have tools that can do predictive modeling and forecasting. And based on that, make data-based decisions. So what are the biggest challenges? The first is lack of data, or let's say, no, we have a lot of data, structured, unstructured, but really not having a right order. The lack of trust, which is company culture. Do we really trust the data? We have a lot of data. Which use case do we begin with? Where do we start? And how do we really extract noise from the signals we really want to examine? And so intuition. Things were done with intuition, based on intuition. That's what we saw, and which basically is not really data-driven. The lack of data literacy, what I said before, is that we really want to help you to make your workforce data literate. And if a decision goes wrong, who is held accountable for that if there is no data that was thoroughly examined and decisions were made based on that data? So, how do we get started? What we experience is choose a simple use case. Do you have a use case which is important to enough for the managers, for the stakeholders, that has to be examined? Do you have data for that? Is it relevant to the business, and can we convince a lot of people or enough people to create a mindset? And it has to be not only starting from bottom up, it has to be a top to bottom approach as well, because the managers, the decision makers have to, let's say, really express the culture making data-based decisions. So that was it from my side. Thank you very much. I hope to see you outside for some discussions. We have a booth right across the surround stage, and then, well, you can miss me with my red suit outside, and hoping to see you for a beer. Thank you so much.